All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends, Catherine and Lori and Dan. And today we are going to continue our discussion of sacred contracts. There, I just got to stand up. Okay, you're not going to see it because my back is what it is. Sacred Contracts by Caroline Myss. We are in chapter 4. Is it chapter 4? Let me look. Chapter 4, yes. Chapter 4 is Speaking Archetypes, Your Four Principal Energy Companions. And we are at the section titled The Victim, Guardian of Self-Esteem. But before we get going with that, and that's page 116. I'm going to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Catherine, you can take it with the reading.
Lori Emmons here in Denver.
Dan Chiswick here in Las Vegas.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement. All right, the victim, guardian of self-esteem. Being a victim is a common fear. The victim archetype may manifest the first time you don't get what you want or need, are abused by a parent, playmate, sibling, or teacher, or are accused of or punished for something you didn't do. You may suppress your outrage at the injustice if the victimizer is bigger and more powerful than you. But at a certain point, you discover a perverse advantage to being the victim. You may be afraid to stand up for yourself, or you may enjoy getting sympathy. The core issue of the victim is whether it's worth giving up your own sense of empowerment to avoid taking responsibility for your independence. Many people in my workshops have described their victim as their most vulnerable aspect. I felt that I was set up to be a victim, said Tim, because I was taught never to fight back, but to avoid conflict. Avoiding conflict is certainly the wiser path, but only when you know you can stand up for yourself if you need to. Otherwise, you are running away, and I have always felt that I was running away from something or someone. One time when I was shopping, the salesperson gave me the wrong change. I had given her a $50 bill, but she handed me change for a 20. Yet I stood there saying nothing. I told myself that I didn't want to embarrass her, so I walked out of the store. As soon as I made it to the street, I almost exploded in anger at myself. Once again, I had allowed myself to be victimized. I saw it happen, and I just stood by and allowed myself to get ripped off. And to make this situation worse, even when I told myself to go back in there and get the right change, I managed to talk myself out of it by saying they would never believe my story of the invisible $50 bill. Eventually, Tim realized that he had to confront this victim energy because the quality of his life depended on it. I knew that as long as I could not or did not protect myself, I would always feel like a victim of something or other. And even if I were not being victimized, there would come a time when I would no longer be able to tell the difference. I made a commitment to myself to act in behalf of my own well-being, no matter how uncomfortable it made those around me. I soon learned that every action one takes after making a choice to protect oneself is a major action. One time when I was at work, a guy asked me if I could run his errands for him. I had always said yes to him in the past, but this time I said no. Both of us stood looking at each other. I had shocked him as much as I'd surprised myself. I told him that I was not responsible for seeing that his work get done. A few weeks later, I noticed him as he was walking toward me down the hall. He got a smirk on his face and commented, "Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do my job." The moment he said that, all I could feel was respect for myself, and I knew from that point on that I could protect myself, not only because I could respond honestly, but also because I knew I could live with the consequences of my honesty. The victim archetype had come full circle within Tim's psyche, from being a symbol of weakness to being a reminder of his own strength. When he thinks of the victim now, he does not think in powerless terms, but measures what he will or will not do so that he never again feels taken advantage of. As Tim puts it, The victim archetype is the guardian of my personal boundaries. Before, what I recognized as personal boundaries were more like self-inflicted prison walls. It's amazing how your world changes when you feel that you can take care of yourself. The lessons associated with the victim archetype demand that you evaluate your relationship to power, particularly in your interactions with people with whom you have control issues and need to construct personal boundaries. The primary objective of the victim archetype is to develop self-esteem and personal power. When you are in a situation in which you feel threatened, or you suspect that you lack the appropriate social, professional, or personal power, take notice of that reaction, physically, emotionally, and mentally. That is the intuitive voice of your inner victim. To help direct your responses to all of your experiences and relationships, say, quote, I am committed to my own empowerment. What choice can I make here that will serve my own empowerment? Unquote. Name the problem or threat you need to overcome and the power that you need to possess in order to do so. Keep your eye on the truth that everything and everyone in your life is there by contract to assist in your spiritual maturation. You have contracts with people who are directly connected to the victim archetype. Their primary role is to help you develop your self-esteem through acts of honesty, integrity, courage, endurance, and self-respect. Those people whose contracts are linked to empowering your victim will play or have played the leading roles in awakening in you an awareness of the value of these spiritual qualities and how essential they are to your well-being. Do you want me to go to the next one or talk about this one? Go.
Do you guys have anything you wanted to talk about on the victim side?
I could, but it just depends on other people. I always have stuff to say, so what's new?
Well, I mean, we could say something and then we could come back and read some more. I mean,
Okay.
whichever. You want to go that route,
Yeah, well, I'll
or you
jump
want
out.
to just wait?
We
Yeah, I'll go ahead
really,
and
we re-
Oh God, our timing is just really good today. Um, on the victim thing, I identify that in a lot of ways because of my background. But I've also learned over the course of time, kind of like he did, how to, in most cases, you know, uh, bark back, as I say it, kind of in my head, kind of fight my, back, but I pick the battles. But I will have to say there was one friend that no matter how hard I tried to get them to understand that where our friendship was, and we're friends, but it always felt like I was having to defend myself. And two, this friend was always saying that I was playing the victim, and I'm trying to tell him, no, I'm just trying to set boundaries within what, where I'm at, and you don't seem to respect that. And eventually I had to, get very brutal with him and I couldn't do it face to face because every time it just, but I've told him through a chat, and through that they pulled back. But yeah, sometimes, the victim can really overtake, and it is, however they said it, that protective that keeps, kind of keeps you very protected, and but it's also empowering when you break through and can really say, no, I'm not going to be there anymore. And so in that, for those that are in that state, I say break free of that a little bit, and it makes it easier to use it appropriately.
We're all so vocal today, aren't we?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Jason.
Morning, Jason. Yeah, I can see how, well, I can think back in my own life where, like, well, this part that it talks about, at a certain point, you discover a perverse advantage to being the victim. And I don't know whether or not people, when they get to that point, they even recognize that that's how they're acting. You know, I mean, I feel like for so many years I could look back and it was my mom always, she was always the victim of everything. It's just everything. Nothing was ever going her way and everybody was always against her. And I've come across a lot of people in my life that have that kind of theme going. And you feel like you just want to be like, wake up, you have more control than you think you do, you know? And yet at the same time, I mean, I'm sure that there's times in my life where I have felt like, you know, I have absolutely no control over a situation and I'm just stuck in this mess, whatever it is, and it's not my fault, it's someone else's fault. And you know, I can't do anything about it, and then I wallow in my own self-pity about it, and there's all that. So I'm guessing that's the victim that's kind of coming out in me in that way. I'm curious about if that if it comes out in that way, what does that stem from in my childhood? So I wonder about that part of it, and I just kind of think the next time it comes up, what I can correlate it to and work on that within myself in some way. If whenever I feel powerless in a situation, it's what is it's really going on, and am I really powerless? Can I find a way to empower myself in that situation and not feel like I am stuck, if you will?
Yeah, that's the thing. You really got to just, you got to think through it and give yourself that opportunity at least, rather than I find that's better than remaining just kind of stuck in it and while I'm trying to ignore it. If there's something like that going on, it's like with things going on in the world today and different things, both in like technology and political and everything, and it's hard not to get drawn into both of those and the uncertainty of it and all the serious implications that there could be, as well as like the um, environmental stuff that's going on, and just be like, wow, it's especially when so many people are bringing up all the worst case scenarios all the time, that you can be drawn just to those worst case scenarios in each one of those topics, and instead of being able to step back a little bit and have faith that it's not going to be as bad as all that, or maybe it could, maybe it could turn out even a lot better, that some of these terrible looking things are going to be bringing to light the issues further, and that maybe they'll get more more common sense approaches, uh, as related to them, and that can have a more positive impact, and that we can continue to go on with our lives in a very good, positive fashion, not focusing on the negative all the time as well.
I wish they'd get on with it then.
I feel like this victim mentality is it's the thing that comes up and when you're thinking to yourself, why me? Or why did this happen to me? Or why do I have to go through this? Or why am I dealing with this situation? Or, whatever. I kind of could
Oh,
recognize when there was the part in there where it was the person who had, paid with the $50 bill and then, was afraid to say something about it, to stand up for themselves and get the proper change because they paid him back in the 20. And that seems like such a, a minor thing, that why can't you stand up for yourself in that situation? But I understand it because it feels like it's a confrontation thing. You think you're going to be in a confrontation over something, even if it's minor. And in I struggle with confrontation because with me, even though it could be a productive debate if both parties could have a conversation without walls coming up and defenses being thrown out, that often when you disagree with somebody, it's it feels like a confrontation, and my childhood was filled with confrontations between my parents. I mean, they were just arguing all the time. And so I know that arguing, whether it's myself arguing with someone or my my kids arguing with each other when they were younger, or my son and daughter-in-law arguing with each other, the kid or the grandchildren, whatever it is, it's always a trigger for me. I can see it when there's escalating volume of voices. It immediately triggers in me a fight or flight thing where I have to get out of there, or I have to be yelling at them to stop, depending on who it is. And so I think that is probably part of that victim aspect too, is that triggers the fight or flight, which is probably what it means by like the guardian of self-esteem, is what it's talking about there. Is it's the thing that tries to protect us from experiencing whatever it is that we think is trying to hurt us, whether it may not be a physical hurt, but that confrontation can feel like it could hurt emotionally. So we want to avoid it. And I think that's that victim mentality that comes out. So.
That was spot on.
Yeah, very much so. I can even say, through my childhood with parents that would act out and then a little bit of physical and stuff. Oddly enough, I feel it. It's weird. I feel my body tightens up. I can't explain exactly the way it feels, but my body tightens up, and then my senses just get a little heightened, and I'm kind of, like you, it's like, okay, do I need to, like as a kid, me and my sister like would run downstairs, use the phone and call my grandparents or something, but we would get out of the physical realm there for that little bit and then go downstairs, try and call on the phone if we could, unless our parents followed or something. It's and even into my adult life, it's still there a little bit, but I've learned, that not every situation is that same aspect, but it still doesn't change the sense that my body goes on a heightened sense of, and it is a protecting of me, in that sense of, that's what I learned. That's inbred for me from when I was little, so it's just inbred in me. instinctive, and it takes a lifetime, and it will be a lifetime of always working towards not letting that overtake. And for the most part, I think I've done okay, but man, it's hard. It is hard to break it though too sometimes, and you have to really work at it, and you have to realize that not everybody is going to be confrontational, or like you said with the 50, with the change, you know. And I've even learned now sometimes that, half the times the person giving the change doesn't know how to count change back anyway. They're doing what's being told by the machine instead of learning like how I learned. I actually learned how to count in my head. I'll start in my head as I see, okay, they pay me this. I'm going in my head, okay, well, two, if it's like 5 cents, okay, 5 cents, and another 50, and then $4 or something in my head. I'm already a step ahead, you know, even as they're sitting there and looking up and then counting, I've already got it. So it's interesting how, but yet you don't want that confrontation. You don't want to cause a scene out in public. And that's one thing I don't really like, is causing a scene out in public.
That part of it seems like it should be a non-confrontational thing. It's just, this is science, this is the way it is, this is math, and math don't lie. And how we can relate getting the correct change to self-esteem or the victim or whatever. What you think that being the victim, you have to get shortchanged?
Well, I think they're looking at it like, well, if I say something or if I speak up, then they're going to get mad and they're going to get defensive and say, well, I gave what this told me, or this, or how dare you question me? I'm the, and people can get like that. I've seen it, and you know, at the littlest thing. I mean, I've gotten defensive at the littlest thing sometimes myself, and it wasn't because anybody did any, the person did something wrong. It was just me, the way I took it or the way I perceived it. So, sometimes people put that perception there ahead of time, and it may never happen. I think that's the other biggest culprit, is we put a perception there ahead of time and think that, well, if I say something, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, and then, and half the time it, probably doesn't.
I know I've been dealing with for a while. There were some ladies in my town that I would have lunch with. I didn't know them really well, but after, having lunch with them here and there, and I met them through a friend, and she kind of invited me to the lunches. And but after a while, I realized that I wasn't invited anymore. And I realized too, I mean, I knew this sort of fairly quickly, that they're very conservative. And they could, by a few things that I said or refrained from saying, that I was not only a Democrat as opposed to the Republican, but I was liberal, very liberal. And I'm very open-minded. I'm proud of that. And they stopped inviting me to the lunches. And I sort of felt like, kind of a victim, like, wait a minute, you're not going to invite me, or is there another reason? And I kept thinking, is there something I said or something I did? And I don't think that's it. And I don't need to even really review that. There's, I don't know if you guys know Mel Robbins, but she's kind of has a kind of popular saying, like, let them. You don't need to worry about that. You have to get over the fact that you're not going to be involved with these people anymore. And they've made their decision. They've decided that these are the people they want to hang with, and I'm not one of them. And that's okay. And I've gotten to that point where it's like, that's okay. I'd rather them be with people that they would rather discuss their conservative ways. I don't want to talk about that stuff, with them, because we probably would end up in a big argument. Um, and and I know that they don't talk about all that stuff all the time anyway. So I don't think that's a reason for them not inviting me. But oh, and I know the other thing, because they're all a lot of them are Facebook friends, and they also see the fact that I'm very spiritual, as opposed to being Christian. Okay, yeah. So so not only do they see some of my, not a lot, but some of my political posts, which are very much against this administration, and especially when it comes to the immigrants, that seems to be a hot button in this area. And my heart bleeds for the immigrants, and especially ICE, what ICE is doing, and so what I'm saying is that I had to turn that around. Like, I'm not a victim here. Let them do as they wish. I have other groups of friends, or I'd rather be open to attracting other friends or being with people who are more like-minded, who are more maybe less critical because someone else has a different opinion than them.
Or less threatened by that. That could be part of it too.
Okay. Yeah. I guess so. Less threatened by a differing opinion. You're right. So, I mean, these folks don't even believe, a lot of these folks don't even believe in climate change. They think, oh, it's nothing we've done, So I'm in a very conservative county. I'm more and more, I love the county because it's rural, but I almost would like to move into a more integrated, diverse area, because that's what I like. And so that's my 2 cents on that. It's, you have to kind of talk yourself out of being a victim, not saying it. I also, one more thing. A friend of mine was feeling victimized just because of this administration. She would, it was very difficult. It was very difficult for me too. But once she got involved politically, like as an activist, and went to marches and got involved in some of the groups springing up, the grassroots, she is just like excited to be doing that work, and the various people she's meeting and discussions she's having, which are, she kind of likes being around people who also have a driven need to understand and talk about these issues. And she doesn't feel like a victim. She feels much better because she's doing something. And I'm going along with her. I'm helping her in some areas. I can't jump full feet ahead. I can't have my whole world be about activism. No. As a matter of fact, I made it clear in one of our meetings that I need to also think about energetically how I can help, which means meditate, pray, envision what I wish this country to be, and see it like already here, that kind of thing. Because I think that's important too. So, yeah, you do what you can to not be a victim. Get yourself out of that victim mentality.
I think that's a perfect example of what we're talking about here with the contracts with other people, that these other people are there to provide these opportunities for us to come into our own greatness, if you will. And because I know that, yeah, Trump is a huge trigger for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. But yet, like you said, your friend, instead of playing the victim in that situation, she's now feeling empowered because she's doing something about it. And that's a huge thing. So we don't have to. I'm suggesting that we look at what's going on in the world, see what it is, and what is it triggering inside of us so that we can work on ourselves and our own empowerment, and what can we do? Because that's the biggest thing I feel like with the victim side of it is, we just wallow in our own victim mentality, then we're not doing anything to empower ourselves. Whereas if we're just, if we're complaining about something happening or some person that's irritating us or whatever, and we're just sitting here going, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. It's our own bullshit coming up telling us that we can't do anything, when in reality, there's all kinds of things that we can do. It's like, my husband loves watching political mumbo jumbo. I mean, that is like his favorite thing to do, is watch political drama related news. And he'll bring something to me and he'll be so upset about it. And I'm like, well, if you're that upset about it, what can you do to make a difference, rather than just sitting here and complaining about how horrible it is or what bad situation is being created or whatever? What can you do about it? Because our government is set up so that we can take action and make a difference, make changes. But I think most of us just sit here and wallow in the how much we're unhappy about this, that, and the other, and we don't actually get up and do something about it. But that's the key, isn't it? And but I
Yeah.
think that this whole thing, the idea with these different contracts that we have with each other, as well as people that show up in our lives that rub us the wrong way, or that some big event that's happening in the world, I try and think of those things like, I am blessed to be here to see this all happening, and how I can change or be or do or whatever in my own life because of this event, whatever it is. And, because if we think back on all the different things that have happened in history, and how the different roles that people played in it to make the world a better place, what can we do in the right now to make the world a better place, even if it's just from our own little place in the world? What can we do, rather than just sitting here and wallowing in the whanny nanny about how much we hate it, or we are disappointed by it, or whatever? What can we do? Like, I could go off all day long about the whole food system and or the education system, or the government or whatever. And, I kind of feel like if I'm going to complain about it, I better get up and do something about it. But, that's,
I,
that's
yeah, I agree.
Oh, Samantha. Vote for Samantha.
Is she running for something? I just didn't know. I didn't know. When she does run
no,
for
definitely not running for anything. But if I did do something, then I would be saying my whole point is that we aren't powerless. We can do something
Right.
if we so choose to. But I'm working from my little circle of the world on my life, and
But
my
when we talk, just
how can I make it better for them?
I agree. And to me, that's a ripple effect. What you're doing and your choices um, change the collective consciousness, and I believe that. And like, for instance, the one thing that I'm joining my friend Jude on, we're going to, I live in Maryland. We're going to go to South um, Pennsylvania, and there's a section. She's been given the certain amount of people that have inconsistent voting records. We don't know anything else about them except that sometimes they vote, sometimes they don't. Well, we've been tasked to go to knock on doors and talk to these people and try to just try to, and that's why I liked it. It's like, this isn't like changing their mind. This is just saying, we really need you to vote this year. I don't care how you intend. I'm not going to ask you about that. We just need you to vote. And so, easy peasy. It still means you have to get out there and pound pavement, and you're going to get people who are answer the door and be grumpy and stuff like that, and that's okay. But it's not like I can't really do well with getting in the weeds of political discussions with people that hold the opposite view. I don't want to do that. Yeah, so, but I can do this, just vote. We're just asking you, what can we do or say, or I'm going to a meeting tomorrow with her, with this Democratic committee. And, they're going to give us some tips on what to say. So that'll be interesting too. So I'm just, dipping my toe into it just a little bit. And, yeah, so it's, even if it's a small thing, you do what you're comfortable with, but do, maybe do something, pick and choose and just do something. So,
And that's the one main crust of all this is, like Samantha was saying, we have more influence within our own sphere than trying to do something really big, and and it also goes back to the fact that, and I've learned this a long time ago, but I have to keep getting reminded, because even recently with some of my own personal life things going on, and I heard something this last week, and it hit me. It's like, wait a minute, some of what I'm going through, yes, it's not in my control. It's happened. I don't like it, but how I frame it and how I look at it and how I move forward from it can have a big effect on how I respond, even if I can't change the aspects, of what's happening, what's going on, but how I look at it and how I respond and get out of basically a victim mentality and go back to, okay, let me change this, let me frame everything that's happened over the last few years, change it. There's something I'm learning from it that somehow I probably didn't learn maybe the first time around too. Maybe it's what's bringing me to this point now of, okay, let me change this thought process. I've known that from all the different books we've read before, all the things we thought, going back to even the book, what do you say when you talk to yourself, or change your thoughts, change your mind, living the wisdom of the Tao. Sometimes we forget those things when we get into these core aspects of ourselves, that we do have some power in some of this, and it's just moving forward in that direction. And it's not going to be easy. That it's going to rear its ugly head even more and harder, probably, in a lot of ways. But I've got to push forward in how I look at it and how I treat it, and how I respond with others too, in that know what I'm going through too, and realize that I'm impacting their lives by, in some ways, that victim mentality too. But if I change it, maybe it will open.
well, maybe you'll see it differently too, too. And
Yeah,
you'll be a little bit like a role model for them. Like, I mean, for instance, I know exactly what you're talking about, because what I do is I, when I'm having, kind of a quandary going on in my mind, I'll say, spirit or God or universe, help me to see this differently, and also I always remember this is happening not to us, but for us to learn, and to, giving us an opportunity to reframe it so that it's more, we can look at it in a more positive way. This is teaching us something. This is showing us that we have to look at this differently. And, so less as a victim, but more as, aha, I've had this situation before. And then we keep getting the same situation if we don't quite handle it well. We keep getting it until we get it, until we get how we're supposed to sail through it, and not as a victim, but as somebody who can almost transmute that into something, into gold. You got a rock and now you got gold.
I like that though. I like how you said that, fail through it, because until you learn or pick up the little, you kind of fail through it. And that's kind of where I've been in some aspects, you know. interesting enough. But it's interesting how you go through things and you revert back to things so easily, even though you've heard things or you've learned things or you've tried to apply things before. It's interesting how easily those core aspects of who you are can rear their ugly heads, even though you don't want that to rear up. Going back to that point with that person about the change, that was probably a very core aspect from something that happened when they were younger. And, or like Samantha, when she was talking about, her parents always arguing me with, what my parents and what I've lived through, you know, those are harder to change and move into something
You're retraining,
better.
you're
Yeah,
training your brain, or how you respond to certain things. Yeah. So that's hard. I agree.
but
Yeah.
it's interesting how hard it is. I mean, I'm in my 60s now, and I'm still trying to learn, break free of some of these very core things I've learned, and yet things happen, and it's weird. I kind of run back to it, even though I don't want to run back to it. That's the other part of it, that victim thing. I think that is so hard for so many people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a physiological component too. There's chemicals that are into the bloodstream when the victim mentality kicks in. And we can become addicted to those chemicals over time. Cortisol and adrenaline, and all of these chemicals are going into our system when that victim mentality kicks in. And it's there to protect us.
Yeah. The fear. Oh, what's the other part of that? That fear that something's going to harm us. So that's the cortisol. Yes, I agree.
And victim mentality is to protect us from, it can't all be our fault. I mean, you're just your tiny little itty bitty baby and you don't know what's going on. So, you don't want to blame the caregiver. It's a lot easier to blame yourself, and it starts really young.
Oh, true. That's true. But that's why, at least for me, that's why I searched out something that had a more positive message to give me. I didn't want to go around feeling crummy. I didn't want to go around feeling I had, it was just me against the world. I believe that life has more meaning than that, and we're supposed to break through of um, those beliefs that are false, and try to break them down, and all those chemicals, as you say, Kenji. And it's true. I'm sure the anxiety that I felt throughout my life is exactly that cortisol. And that cortisol wears on you, and it has physical changes in your body. And yeah,
Increase
and it,
things that it does.
yeah, it creates trauma situations too. I've been talking about trauma with my new therapist, and something I didn't know, which you probably all already know, but I thought I'd mention it, is that trauma can be inherited, and I feel like I inherited, in other words, genetically inherited. There's something called epigenetics, and the person in your family, or even a couple of generations prior to that, could have gone through some traumatic things, and that shows up in your DNA, that trauma. And then when I went from there and started thinking about Native Americans, how their generational trauma has probably, you know been extremely difficult to deal with, as well as the African American and the Jewish population from the Holocaust. They found that literally in structures in the DNA, as well as, I think my therapist was saying, in bones, in cadaver bones, that it was visible that there was trauma from past generations. So I just, she suggested a book that I just got and I'm going to read. And so I believe that. So I believe that some of the anxiety and depressive episodes over my life have come from my mother and whoever else, I inherited that from. But I do think by forgiving them all, my family, my mother, especially my sister, I have helped break that generational trauma. But now I want to understand physically how that occurs, and I think forgiveness, that keeps coming up again and again. It's like an onion, okay, got that layer, here's another layer, so anyway, yeah, so I agree with what everybody is saying, just different aspects of victimhood and trauma and what you do with it, and it's really up to you. You want to try and handle it in a positive way. But right now I'm going through some therapy, and plus my spiritual buddies. I have a lot of support system, and yeah, and a lot of prayer. So
You
I
guys brought
was-
up something,
okay.
a couple things. I just wanted to hop out real quick.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head. There's obviously other aspects, but in regards to fear, um, and how we respond initially to these times when you are being taken advantage of. Okay, so like you can feel like you can end up feeling like a victim all the time because over time you're constantly being taken advantage of. It's kind of whittling you away, and you never really learn to respond to it. Never really learned like um, how to handle it, how to in the moment be like, well, hold on a minute here. So are you telling me you're not giving me all my change back, and then being able to discuss it instead of just saying, oh, well, maybe I'm wrong, the wrong one, and they're, second guessing yourself. You don't have any, don't have the experience in doing that. Never were maybe taught, how to react when you're being taken advantage of, recognizing that you're being taken advantage of. And the other, another part of that is that the fear of it, that becomes a fear that you recognize either as fear or just that response. And then that can take different, that can kind of embody itself in different ways. You can either have that feeling um, of like fearing bringing it up, or you can have, there's another thing I was brought to my attention is fear can also manifest itself in you feeling like putting it off. I'll deal with it later, but that's really actually your fear of facing it, or you know or doing something about it. And so it can be disguised as in a response, but it's the fear, like you're saying. It can be a different sort of type of fear of having to deal with it. But then there's also sometimes, like, though, like Dan was mentioning, you don't want to bring it up, you don't want to make a scene or whatever. It's the inconvenience of it that you're like, you think, oh, I'm going to be cool about it, I'm not going to, plus I don't want to inconvenience you, I got things I want to do, I don't want to mess up my day, and I'll just be the cool one, or I'll be the forgiving one, like right there in the moment. And I think a lot of that actually is brought up in our upbringing, where we're taught that, especially if you're coming from, like I came from, as a child, I was my grade school, or actually preschool, was like Lutheran, and then there was Catholic and Christian and Baptist, and understand, but it was always that, forgiveness and that things will work out, and that sort of the thing, and it was never, they were never preparing you that you are going to be attacked. You are going to, that's part of life. You are going to be attacked. You're going to be taken advantage of. You need to learn when this is happening, and you need to know what to do about it. And it seems to me, and I could be completely wrong with this, but it seems to me like that in middle class, lower class families, that's more of the cases to where you're taught forgiveness and taught to have faith that it'll just work out and that the God's there for you and all that stuff. And which I believe there is that, but then there's also that we need to be that there's the untold story in that level of I don't know, I guess economic familyhood is that it's that you need to recognize when you're being taken advantage of. And you need to have a way to deal with it. You need to have, you have your lawyer on speed dial, have your accountants on speed dial, have, authorities on, have relationships and friendships with people that can come to your aid. And we're not taught that, but when you look at the higher income earner families, that is something that's taught. They have those resources ready and for their family members to step in and protect them. And so they know when they know they can recognize when they're being taken advantage of, and they know who to call or what to do or what to say already because they're being taught that. And so they're not they're not being whittled down all throughout their life with these different small things or even large things that can really hurt either your self-esteem or your confidence and give you that feeling of being a victim over time because you're constantly capitulating to this, that, or the other that are maybe seem like small things, but after a while you get that sort of mentality that you're the victim, that you're always the one, and that maybe, hey, even you're the like kind of the that's your role in life is to take that and do something good with it. Like instead of knowing how to react right away, how to take it, how to think about it. And sometimes you may want to say, okay, this is going to be really inconvenient and come back to it, or I'm going to just let it slide, or I'm going to let the person know, hey, you're taking advantage of me, but I don't have time to deal with it. Or, and you can be, if you're like that, if you've been taught that and you have those people on speed dial, you can fight back, correct the situation, and then forgive them later for putting you through all of that. So it's it's very interesting that in different ways you can look at it. But those are some things I wanted to bring up, and you guys had the points about that. So thank you.
Boy, do I do agree with you. My parents, really weren't ones that communicated a lot, didn't talk about those sort of things, but I wish they had. They didn't feel it was their job, or somehow they just didn't do it, where they tried to teach your kids about life and what to do in life. Is somebody leaving? Catherine left? Okay.
Yeah, we've got another
Catherine.
Zoom call coming up here at the top of the hour. She's getting ready for that. So yeah.
Oh, okay. You too, Samantha?
I do, but I'll be okay. I can wait.
Okay.
It's okay if I join a little bit late. It's no big deal.
Okay. But I like everything that you said, Jason, is that we don't try to do enough to protect ourselves, in case that somebody takes advantage of us. And indeed those things happen. And I always feel like you should always try to hold someone accountable if you can, and if you have the resources to do that, or just confront them, and tell them, like when I went through my acid reflux problem, which I'm still dealing with, but it destroyed my teeth. So I have almost complete restoration of my teeth now. I have temporaries, crowns, and I get permanent crowns soon. But anyway, I went to my periodontist who missed it, the early stages of the acid reflux, and I held him accountable, and it felt great. He didn't offer to pay for anything. And just recently I communicated to him that could he at least give me 1 year free of dental cleanings, which would include 4. in a year. And that's like $800 to him, you know. So I haven't heard anything from him. And this was Tuesday where I sent the message through his assistant or his dental hygienist. And so, you know, I'm going to move on. There's no doubt, you know, which was even startling that they would even ask, do you still want to be with our practice? But yeah, you do what you can. I don't know how
Well,
far.
there's
What?
well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's a good point, and I heard something recently that about kind of it's kind of a sales tactic or a making a deal type of a tactic, but I think it could be used in your situation where you can state like, well, look, I'm not gonna really like uh, chase this down and make a big deal about it. I
I'm not
think,
going to sue him or anything.
but well, yeah, let me finish real quick. But you kind of can state that, um, like, well, in the sales idea of it was, I'm not going to ask you to reduce your prices. But if I'm not going to go through all the haggling and all that. I'm going to go ahead and, give you, pay you what you want, but I want you to do this one thing for me, which was, allow me to pay using my credit cards that would give me the bonus miles or whatever is what the person wanted. They had something they wanted. They were going to, so they stated it in a way that, and not like, will you do this for me? But this is what we can do, kind of a thing. I'm not going to do this, but I want this, you know, do this for me, kind of a thing. And so I think that might be, it's a lot of times it's like, how do we deal with it in the way of actually speaking to them? How do we state what it is that we want in a way that lets them know that this is the option where they can move forward. We can all move forward with it. But that's what I was saying.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to at least get, like, I'll stay with your practice, even though this all occurred and you did apologize and acknowledge that you missed this. And it ended up, I paid $72,000 for my teeth restoration. So could you at least give me, a year's worth of free cleanings? And still haven't heard anything. So I figure, and I really thought he was an ethical person, but I mean, people show you who they are, and I'm still going to hold him in the light, but I'm obviously disappointed and that's who he wants to be. So be it, but you have to try. You have to try to hold people accountable. I don't like to go to extremes.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, but I agree with you. I wish I'd been taught to have those guardrails in place, having those resources. I do have a friend who's a financial advisor, so he does help me now and then in that regard. So I'm lucky with that. But
yeah, and when I think about it seriously, it's like that should be the first thing that we should be trying to acquire. It's like we're not saving, don't be saving or your money and getting bills or having bills come in that you're for other things. We should have like, have our lawyer on retention or retainer, have our, be protected with our insurance, be protected with these things because it's inevitable that we're going to need them at some point. Build those relationships. Way back in like high school, we should be teaching this, and not like saving for our for a family or a vacation or something like that. But first and foremost, be aware and that we are going to be challenged this way, and we need to have that team behind us. And then that will make you that actually when you I believe because I believe when you have that team behind you and you've been taught those things, you're gonna just react to things a lot differently going forward in life, and you won't build up that victimized feeling.
well, you'll feel like you have a a backup, support. Yeah, I don't have
Yeah,
a.
you'll know
You have
exactly
a
what to
lawyer,
do.
Jason? You have
I'm
a
sorry?
lawyer? You have a lawyer on retainer?
No, I don't. And it's
Uh,
sad because I'm one of those people that were taught, things work out, and plus my family was well known in the city. Um, but since my dad has passed away and my a lot of my relatives have passed away, I'm not in connection with the people that they knew, and I've never really built those relationships like should. I
so
really
you're
should.
telling us you learn from this and that we, yeah,
I've
that
learned, yeah.
people should start, early in life and have these sort of things set up. Yeah.
And I think it's better to start earlier in life. If, as for kids, it's a lot easier if you get used to speaking to these authority figures as a kid, and then the lawyer or the doctor or, whoever it is knows that person from being a child, from being a kid. And
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh yeah, I knew you as a kid. I'll be there for you, buddy." I mean, it's it's less of a transactional thing. It's more of a friendly, backing each other up type of a thing, and being part of a community. But building those relationships, I think, is just priceless. And so I think most of us have not been taught that.
Yeah, for sure. The just networking is a huge aspect that I don't feel like what's funny about that aspect of it is my dad knew so many people because he was in the sales industry. He worked in sales for what do you want to call them? All of the components that go into the air systems of big buildings. And so he sold all of those types of components to big contractors or whoever, I don't know. So he knew a lot of people because he would go to these conferences and he would meet all the people. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Mad Men. My dad was like the madman guy, except for he wasn't like in marketing. He was actually a person who was in sales. And so he was
Mhm.
into, he had a lot of people he made connections with. And back in his day, it wasn't playing golf, it was playing racquetball. He would go to the club and they would all play racquetball with each other. And that was how they would interact and build these like connections with each other without actually having to have a person on retainer necessarily, but it's knowing somebody who knows somebody, if you know what I mean. It was all about the connections, making all those connections. But it's funny, I think back on that and I realized that's what he was doing, but he never taught us that's what we should do. That wasn't what we should be doing, but that's what he would do. So, and that's how he made all his money back in those days. But
Somehow
anyway,
I'm feeling like that the shortchanging episode or whatever there is not so much a victim as a mistake made by the clerk that she didn't give the right change. So you can look at that I'm a victim here. And I think it's just one of those things that happens and needs to be confronted that way. It's not the emotional part of victim mentality type thing. It's just something that happened. And in my family, I'm sorry, that money, you need to make it right. You know, us poor folk don't have money to be saying it's okay to make a mistake.
But that's the point. You see it as a mistake. This person, they saw it as in their mind, they saw it as a full-on confrontation before it ever started. So that's why they just took and said, okay, and went on in their head. That's um, I get it. It is. They should know how to count change. It's a mistake. And it's like, no, excuse me, but you gave me this. It really should be this. And I would, make a point of it, but that's me.
Yeah.
But that's goes back to the individual person. You got to look at the individual person and see where, you know, how they look at it. And if they look at this, oh, this is going to be, and they're already in their mind going, this is going to be a big, and everybody's going to look at me and everybody's going to see me. That's why they walked out. But then they get mad at themselves outside, because I've done it in other areas. It's like I'll be in a situation and it's like, and then I'll kind of just back off because I don't want to deal with the confrontation. But then later on, I'll come back and like, damn it, why didn't I just, right then and there do something about it? But I didn't, because I escalated in my mind and saw it being more than what it probably would have been. And so with that,
Well,
I'll
those are
just say
two
that.
great points. Yeah, those are two great points, and I think you should see it as most things are start as a mistake, an honest mistake, right? But if you could, and so you have a choice to react one way or the other. You may find out later that as you're, leaving the parking lot that you're like, wait a second, I didn't get all my change back. But if you happen to notice right then and there, you got one of the two the things. You can act like they did it on purpose, or you can act like it was an honest mistake. And I think it's always better to assume that it was an honest mistake and give the person a chance to correct it, even though it may not be. You may you may end up driving out of the parking lot going, they knew what they were doing, but at least I handled it right and stood up for myself. And yeah, so I mean, but yeah. And that's interesting too, what you're saying about the money. It's like, yeah, if you're for, lower income people, it's like, you don't have no problem stepping up about a money situation. But if you're, you may be more willing to think that it's your fault if you're more of a victim mentality type person, or give it some reason for doing that. Maybe it's retribution and karma that's, you might think
Uh,
that or something. But at least you're stepping up for yourself if you're able to, and you know how to react to it. And I think that was just kind of that example. But yeah, everything kind of starts with a mistake. I've had my rights violated, with like illegal search and seizure and things like that, and then really caused big issues. And you can retain a lawyer. You can retain, and get some justice back. But like in my case, I didn't get full justice back. I got some of it. I got proven correct and right about it, but then I did not get any compensation for them abusing my rights and treating me the way they did, and mistreating me, or even falsely arresting type of a thing. I mean, you can really be treated horribly and have that still affects me just about every day. I feel like feel a lot less powerful because of, and also feel like the justice isn't always served, and a um, you know worry that I'm going to be mistreated by the authorities. It just changes your whole mindset when you're not able to fight back for yourself. And it can cause my case, it causes me to wake up at night. It causes me to, thinking about it. And still to this day, it's like, man, you feel like those people that do it, sometimes they're doing it knowing that they're doing it, and then they're just going to either try to get away with it and then ask for forgiveness later if they can, or they're going to walk away scot-free and not care one bit and do it to someone else again. So
Purely malicious.
could be malicious, yeah, yeah. So but the world is not, tends to be not, when they say the world's not fair, life's not fair. That's, that the cliches like that don't get fully explained to us as kids, that, we're like, okay, life's not fair, but what does that, we don't ask as a kid, what does that mean? A lot of times because we're always asking our parents, why? And their parents are like, because,
Because I said
eventually,
so.
because I said so, right? So we stop asking, we're like, well, I guess I'll figure it out later. At some point, someone will tell me, well, if you end up finding out because of real life circumstances, then it can be a little too late at those times. So, but if you're going into it knowing, hey, you got to prepare yourself with these things, and they're that important, because they can have life altering effects on you, then you're gonna respect it more. It doesn't mean you get all upset about, well, life shouldn't be that way, and we should be all good people, and everyone should be fair and just and moral and ethical, and I'm gonna be upset and lash out because of it. It's it gives you a chance to prepare, and then so now you're empowered with it, empowered with that knowledge,
So you
So,
feel like your parents should have just explained a little bit more, or found a good book for you to read, or just spent a little more time. Yeah, but I think that
I
that
don't blame
life.
them, but yeah,
Oh no, I get it, but
yeah.
still, parents sometimes, well, a lot of them just don't know what they're doing. But I think life, like that guy that treated you so badly, there's such a thing as karma, and it's going to come back to him, and he's going to learn his lessons, and I also think what he did was about being in power. I mean, power can be an aphrodisiac. He felt powerful, and you were less powerful, so he was taking advantage of that situation, and you see that like everywhere. You really do in
You're
the
right, and
workplace. Yeah.
yeah,
I
you're
mean,
right.
so,
And
but I think you're always going to confront. You just learn that that's human nature. That some people are take advantage, but I still feel that that person will learn the hard way. You know.
I'd love that for some reason though, and I'd like to believe that the karma thing is actually a thing. Um,
You're not
but it
sure
doesn't help. It doesn't help the victim. It doesn't help you
in the moment.
with in the moment or years later,
Yeah.
emotionally and with having gone through the experience. It doesn't help you, and it also kind of feels like you're wishing, bad luck on them because they did something to you. I think it's better I think the idea of like being able to correct the situation legally through the law, through having those avenues. And then, it's going to be an inconvenience. That's the problem. Then being able to forgive them for inconveniencing you after you've won your case is much better than just having to deal with it alone, because that's what a lot of times it seems like. It's like you're alone in that event all
Hmm.
the rest of your life. And in order to even get people to understand it, you've got to bring it up, relive it, rethink about it, explain it. And that takes out of you, energy as well. So it's better to be able to be empowered to deal with it at the moment and know what to do, have people to call. Yeah,
When your rights are violated, right?
yeah.
True, but it's unfortunate. But I do think though that, um, for instance, like if you thought in the moment, you probably could have um, done something about it, gotten a lawyer, so forth. But if it's an African American,
I did get a lawyer about it,
oh,
but
you
the thing
did.
is, it wasn't the lawyer didn't follow through. The lawyer wasn't a civil rights lawyer. It was a lawyer to basically prove that I wasn't the person that they were trying to arrest.
Oh,
It was a case of mistaken identity, and I ended up spending the night in jail, losing my job over it. It was it was I mean the
oh,
next because I went in the next day. I actually I was sick, and but I was sick like with the flu, and I also had to return a cable box at the same time. and the same day, or else you start getting charged for it. So I'm like, I'm going to shoestring budget, and felt good enough to at least drive to the cable place and return the cable box.
Right.
And so I did that, but when I did that, that's when I got pulled over, misidentified as someone with like the same name, and they told they wouldn't take my information as that it was true, so they took me to jail, and they also searched my car and told them, no, you can't do that, don't give you your rights. They still did it anyway. Then they, so you just, and I'm like, you guys are not following the law. I'm not this person. And so I had to go back, fight for my rights, prove that I wasn't that person.
Mhm.
Had to go to jail, and be treated, terribly. Um, and that's all a very scary situation. And
Sure.
it can
Mhm.
happen to anyone. It was middle of the
Mhm.
day. Uh,
Mhm.
and then I went to work and lost my job because I missed the
Right.
following day because I was in jail. First day I
Mm.
was off sick and that was fine, but then the next day I missed work because I hadn't gotten out of jail yet. And then I went in the third day, and they wouldn't believe me. And it was just, I'm like, the same time.
What a
So,
mess.
Yeah.
and then, so
That's,
yeah, so the lawyer, I thought, okay, this is going to be taken care of. And I didn't really think about the aspect of how the trauma was going to deal with, how it was going to affect me over the years. I didn't
mhm.
think about that. I didn't understand that. And uh, the judge agreed with me, and he's like, oh, we need to do something to help you and do something about that. And I'm like, okay, good. I felt like I was getting, you know, helped. But in the end, there wasn't the full justice of being, having my rights violated. I didn't even know that was that I had cause for action to do anything about that. Because the lawyer actually was a friend of the family that was helping me out, and but he wasn't that sort of a lawyer.
Mm.
And it wasn't till way later that I'm like still having the trauma of it. And I'm like, why? And I'm like feeling victimized that, there's nothing I can do about it, And then I did realize years later that I could have sued the city for what they did to me.
Mm. And is there a amount of time where that expires, that possibility? Um, couldn't you have done it even years later? No. No.
At the When I realized it, I think the statutes of limitations
Okay.
had um, gone past the time,
Sure.
but that's I think it's vague, and I still like I still need justice for that. I'm still going through that trauma of
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
I keep trying to move forward from it, but
Right.
it does stick in your mind that you could do everything right and still get victimized, and that comes up in a lot of this, that feeling, that trauma response ends up coming up a
Yeah.
lot. And again, fear disguises itself.
Yeah.
I didn't know that till recently. I didn't realize that until recently, that it disguises itself, and uh, as like, putting it off, as putting off doing something about it, or following through, or whatever. Anyway, enough about me. I try to be
No, I
positive and not
appreciate
be
you
the
telling
not
us
be the
more.
person.
No, thank you, Jason, for going into detail. It was helpful, and I'm sorry that
Oh, good.
you're still dealing with that. Did you ever think about going to see a therapist about that?
Um, I've thought about it,
I
but
think you should. It may maybe nothing, but you know, they might have some really good suggestions for you. Just a thought. Okay, you do what you think's best. But
Yeah, I'm just not in a place to do anything about that. I mean, I understand it. I understand where it comes from, but you can't, we can't, you can't correct that trauma until there is justice for it.
you can find ways
Feeling-
to let it go. I mean, I've had trauma in my life too, and you can find ways to let it go. A therapist
Yeah, I
might.
mean, when absent of anything else, you try to, try to think, oh, that person's going to make the same mistake against someone else, and they're gonna, get them for it, or the karma thing, or hey, I'm a better person for not lashing out and suing my city for it, or whatever. It's like try to do that, and that gets you through it for a little while, but it's sort of like just pushing it aside and not it's sort of it doesn't solve the trauma.
It still keeps coming back to you, and you keep thinking about it and having bad feelings about it when it comes up in your mind.
Because
That's not
there's no real
resolution.
closure. It's
Yeah, no resolution to it. Yeah, well,
Well, there's no vindication. Nothing there that totally says I'm vindicated and that yes, I had this was not my fault. This was nothing I did. This was nothing, and it never should have happened to you in the first place. And that's why you probably don't feel, because you still don't feel like you still feel like it never should have happened. And
well, there's a
well, not
lesson there
bad. It leaves you
somewhere. I
with
mean,
feelings towards other, and it leaves you towards feelings of other situations. Like you can
mhm,
get worried, you get frightened because
yep,
of what you've been through previously. So you're
mhm.
right. In a way, that's a big part of it, the vindication, but also it makes you um, it makes you frightened of
Any other scenario,
like I
anything similar.
still get, like when I see a police officer, I
Yeah.
still get that feeling of being
Yeah,
frightened and trauma, and oh, they're gonna, they can take you and do whatever they want.
right,
Uh,
right.
I
I,
find
I,
myself I find myself watching some YouTube videos on protecting your rights when police
mhm,
are trying to violate them. So that's been helping the knowledge of how to deal with those situations
mhm,
correctly. Even though I did deal with it in a correct way, they just were persistent, and they were not hearing what I had to say. And my license did not they had my information, and it did not correlate to the person they were looking for, except for the name. And I think they actually changed information to make it look like I was the person. Turns out that in the end, what they claimed was that that other person had somehow mixed their name up with mixed themselves up with me and didn't correct it. I don't know how that can happen, but
mm,
I guess if you have a common name, where there's a lot of people with
mhm.
Dan or Samantha, or I mean, it's like with your exact name, even if your middle initial is different, that's basically what they did. They just said, oh no, I think you're the person. And it
Mhm.
could have been that power thing, like you're saying, part of it. Also, he could have realized he's not. He had already stopped me and arrested me illegally, and now he wanted to, push it to make sure, make
Yeah, he
it
didn't
seem
want to
like
be wrong for what he
he did.
did. He didn't want to get in trouble for making a mistake, and ah,
Yeah,
their egos, they're freaking motherfuckers.
yeah. When I went to the cable place, the cable place is in a place where you have to make it's like in a section of town where they have a bunch of one-way streets. So I had to go past it, turn, then turn back, then come back and go back the other way, and then turn back into onto the street and then into the parking lot.
Mhm.
And so that's what I think got his attention to begin with, was that he
Saw
got
you go by and then he
behind
saw
me
you
and
go
then
again.
he saw me make all these quick turns, because I knew exactly where I was going, what I needed to do, but
Yeah.
he
He was just,
took it as I was trying to be evasive, I guess. And then I pulled up into the into the cable place and got out to go in,
Mhm.
and they pulled up behind me and they're like, "Didn't you see me?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't see them until they pulled into the parking lot after me, and I had no reason to believe they were,
after you, for
yeah,
sure.
looking for me. They didn't have their lights on or anything like that."
Right.
And I got out of my car and started it into the place, and they said, "Stop, and get in your car." And they were like, it's like, okay, I followed all their commands, still got violated, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's sad. It's sad.
Yeah.
I
That's,
realize now how it can happen. We
yeah.
see things on TV all the time, and but now I know, and I don't want to have to go through it again in order to use my
Mhm.
knowledge, for sure, either. But anyway, that's
I I would
I just
suggest, I would just suggest, Jason, maybe you could call on Spirit and ask him to help you find a way to release this or to deal with it. You know, that would just be my suggestion.
Oh, I do. I do.
Okay, okay,
I do all of that. I do
okay,
try to. I use
okay,
every means possible to make
okay, all
sense
right.
of it and empower myself and be positive and do all that. Yeah, I do. But it's in the moment, and when it still comes up. It's
It
still
still comes up and it's,
it's a deep, like, traumatic feeling that comes up and out. And so
yeah, it's a
I,
wound.
I
It's a
understand.
wound. Hmm. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing with us and I hope you
I mean, I
find,
don't consider myself like a victim. I don't, don't have the victim mentality, like it's
no.
all the time, like thinking it's always gonna, but I do see that it has eaten away at confidence level, confidence in others, confidence in the authority, confidence that, um, that there is goodness out there, but that maybe the goodness can be disguised as goodness, and or the evil disguised as goodness and stuff. So it brings up all these just different feelings that you really don't want to have to. You just want to move on with your life and be, focus on the positive things and do good things, and but it holds you back. It be a major distraction in your life, and can send you into those depression spirals, because you do feel, ultimately you do feel powerless about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
I imagine that also, when you found out later that you could have done something else about the situation, and then probably beating yourself up for not knowing what you should have known, or well, we have a way of doing that to ourselves too, is the shoulda, woulda, couldas, all that kind of crap that'll come up. Why
Yeah,
didn't
and
I? Or, how could I have not have known that I could have done this or could have done that, or or what could I, or feeling like you can't, there wasn't anything you could have done different. It didn't even matter what you did or didn't. Now you have all of that, all the
and as an
crap that,
example to what we were saying, it's kind of like if you were shortchanged for something, and not only were you shortchanged for something, but then when you got home, you realized, after going through the issues at the store and getting that corrected, you got home and realized they didn't put all your products in the bag,
mm-hmm,
right? And now you're like, just went through all that, and I come home and they didn't even give me what I purchased, or there's something wrong with what was purchased, and now you have to
yeah,
go back and fight again.
yeah.
Uh, and a lot of times we'll be like, no, I don't have the time for this.
I have to move on with my life, but yet at the same time, you're still hurt by it
Yeah,
and still
exactly.
reliving that.
Exactly.
Mm.
So, well, thanks for hearing that, guys. I don't know that you might want to edit that out of the the, the video here, but
No, somebody could learn something from that, or have a similar story, or whatever. It was valuable, and I'm just sorry that it's
thanks.
it's hurt you so much. It's but I know that we all can relate on different things that have happened to us through our lives. Yeah, that have left scars, left wounds. That,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure others have been pulled over and had not good experiences too. And it still riles them. And yeah, that's how police have gotten such a reputation,
Thanks, man.
for not being ethical, you know? So,
Yeah, well, now with the cameras, videos out there,
yeah, that's much better.
you can see how it evolves, how the situation evolves, and so, and I've been learning a good. I don't spend like all day on it, but when they pop into my feed, and I'll I'll watch one, and there's a good one with an attorney that talks about your rights when being pulled over and all this stuff, and he keeps up with the new laws and all that stuff. So it's that aspect of YouTube and social media is helpful.
What's this guy's name? Do you have his name handy?
I'll post the link for you. The about the attorney that, and they
Okay. Do YouTube videos. Yeah.
he reviews videos that people post, I guess, and talks about what they did right and wrong, and
Oh, that would be valuable.
it is.
You might help us avoid some sticky situations too. See, that's something good that could have come out of this. You're advocating for that not to happen to anybody else.
Also, keep in mind that you have to, along with constitutional rights, you have to look at your state's rights too, and keep that in mind of what, you know, is paramount to where you live and where you're at too. And I'm going to go out and say that I don't believe all police officers are like this one guy. I think this one guy,
Correct.
I think we
Yeah.
also need to make that point too, because
There are a bunch of them out there.
there are a bunch of them out there. But at the same point, also there are a lot that do it the right way too.
Yeah.
I've had family members that have been sheriffs and police officers. I never had a ill feeling towards them before this occurred. And then since then, it's like every time you see one, it's like, it brings that trauma back,
Mhm.
and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
Then I see how people can have that knee-jerk reaction if they've been mistreated previously, that they can have that knee-jerk reaction and fight or flight, run from the police or something like that, and cause even more problems. So,
Right.
what were you gonna say, Kenji? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. We just had, I live in a small town in Maine, and we just had a domestic dispute where police officers in the next town took out somebody who had wind chimes in their hand. So you got to be careful. You can't mess around. You got to do what they tell you to do, and then go back after it once it's said and done.
Jesus. That's crazy.
Yeah, sure.
It's all freaking crazy.
What's crazy is they get to keep their jobs. That the Maine Attorney General ruled justifiable homicide. So don't carry wind chimes. Not in Maine.
Yeah,
Crazy.
that's
Crazy.
the immunity that they are given.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the problem comes from, is they have this immunity, They can get away with doing, God, ridiculousness, and then they just keep on going.
Yeah, and then knowing that there's repeat offenders of police uh, um, officers that are repeat offenders of this. I've seen in some cases where they just go to another municipality and get another job, and if they are fired, and then
Yeah.
they continue working, and they don't follow up on their own people
Mhm.
to see, that
There's
sort
no
of reoccurring thing.
expectations of police officers. I mean, you can be a police officer in, Florida and do something wrong and move to California and you're going to get hired.
Yeah.
Right. And
It
that's the
sucks. I mean,
problem.
I see how that all plays out. I mean, no, from an employer standpoint, seeing, it's like knowing how hard it is to find police officers, people who are willing to do that job at that low of pay with that all of it. And, where are they getting the people to fill those spots? People who are willing to get paid less so they can be in an authority position, and you think about the mentality it takes to be that person. And, I mean, uh,
My only I thought about that back when they were talking
and
about.
I'm not saying that, that's an excuse. Obviously it's not, because they need to they need to get better people in place, and they need to pay them better so that they can have quality people doing that job. But
I think
yeah.
there should be a civilian review in every city and regarding
Mm-hmm.
a civilian review that is rotating with people in there that can um, do a review of what officers are going to stay and who needs to go, because that's who they're protecting,
Yeah,
and
there
and
should be.
that civilian those should be paid jobs, the civilian
Mm-hmm.
review board, and it should come out of the officers, the police department's money,
Mm-hmm.
and that so there needs to be some accountability at that level as well,
Yeah.
and created so that
So
it
the
can't be.
civilian review board needs to be elected too.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. Yeah, but again, that's something we should have been pushed into our lives, our heads, and educated about when we were in middle school and in high school. I mean, I even took some law in high school,
Mm-hmm.
a class, but you still, from my point of view, it was still like people are going to be good. People are, you can expect that you shouldn't be always on the lookout for having yourself having your rights violated and being a
Right.
victim all the time. But that is not, and we're not prepared for that part of life. We are, and I
Mm-hmm.
mean, most of us,
Yeah.
though, if you have the means, if you're a family that has lawyers on retention, or a lot of lawyers in the family, or then you're in a different category that's more prepared for what life is really, the things that really affect us throughout our lives, that are pretty much inevitable, that you're going to be having to deal with at some point. So
Yeah.
anyway.
We've sure kept you from your
What's
thing,
that?
haven't we, We've sure kept you from everything, haven't we, Samantha?
It's okay. You guys are my friends, and I want to be with you. I mean, not that Catherine doesn't. I know she does, but she's got more responsibilities on that side of it than what I do. So, it's all good.
Yeah.
It was an important
Yeah.
conversation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I guess my point really was about the trauma, and that we shouldn't blame ourselves so much, but that we can empower ourselves with the knowledge. And like you said, The therapy helps. The other ways of framing it helps. But in the end, the best thing to have is that foreknowledge about what and those connections to be able to reach out to someone and say, hey, this happened to me. Is that right, Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Attorney, Mr.
Mhm.
And that there are different types of attorneys that,
Yeah.
you
How
know,
old are you? How old were you
some
when that
don't, some
happened,
don't.
Jason? If you don't mind my asking.
It was, gosh, I was in my 30s.
Right.
It's in my 30s.
Mhm.
But you have your own other life responsibilities. And I think the biggest thing is I didn't realize how it would affect me. Thought I could be like, what you're
Brush it
saying,
off
what
and
you're saying
it
about the
happened,
karma.
happened.
Oh, the karma's going to get back, or they're going to be, I can let it go. And I've tried to let it go, but that fear response, trauma response, that's no joke. It really sticks with you.
Mhm.
Uh, and if it causes that cortisol, those chemicals like you guys were talking about, now we have no control over that. That's like suddenly programmed into us somehow that we're gonna have
I've
that
heard,
reaction.
I've heard of and actually a friend of mine does this. She's a therapist. It's called EMDR, and that can lessen the trauma impact of a particular incident. EMDR. Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard of it.
Let me look it up a minute.
No, but if you have a link about it, we can send it in the chat.
Okay.
Cool.
I don't have anything right now, and I need to get off in a minute, but I'll get it to you. Yeah, I can always put it in the chat in general.
Mhm.
Okay, and I'll look it up because yeah, I'm all about moving on and being.
And we want yeah, we want you to.
Mhm.
EMDR.
Have you ever considered getting
Been
like
about 20 years now. I tell you,
like
crazy.
activist side of it on that, um, getting involved with organizations that are trying to combat that crap from happening?
You from my point of view, I have that interest. I mean, that's why I ended up spending time, you spend time thinking about it and you want to correct it so it doesn't happen to you again or doesn't happen to other people.
Mhm.
But you don't, it gets mixed up in politics instead
Yeah.
of, and I haven't seen any real groups that come through for that sort of a thing. What I was suggesting was actually something was a comprehensive idea, totally different idea about it. But people talk about defunding the police, and I'm not for that at all. But I think that there should be civilian oversight. We should have the ability to know who our police officers are and
Mhm.
what um
And
because
they're all of their performance history, all of that should be public record so that you can advocate for or against particular police officers in your community. Should be
yeah,
some way
exactly.
to do that where there is a method for
Because you can't leave it up to the people in the
it can't
department to
right
vouch for them and review them and because
right because
like you said,
they've
they
got their
need
own
police
thing.
officers, but we
Yeah,
need civilian oversight to say we understand we need police officers, but we're going to have to find someone else because this person just is not
yeah, they're not the
doesn't
right.
respect the law or doesn't respect our rights.
Mhm.
We don't feel safe when they're supposed to be
I,
providing
and it
us.
just doesn't it doesn't make any sense to me at all how it is that they cannot act, along the lines of, innocent until proven guilty. Yes, you think this person might be the suspect, but you can still treat them with respect until you know for sure, how is it that we can't act in that way? How come we can't, these police officers are immediately jumping to the conclusion that this person, whoever it is the culprit of whatever it is they think happened or whatever is going on. I mean, they're just immediately assuming the person is guilty and treating them like less than a person because they think that that's the true situation, where in reality, the way that they need to be treating people is innocent until, yeah, you think the person is whatever, but treat them with respect until you deter, and I think police officers should be treating everybody with respect, regardless of how, I mean, it's kind of like they're in a customer service position and they're not being taught customer service behaviors. I mean, it seems, oh,
Yeah,
so
true.
dumb.
And
So,
if you're wondering what it was that this other person who I was mistaken for had done, because a lot of the times you'll hear the police officers' responses, well, they'll say there's uh, a a violent criminal was in the area, or we need to know if you have a warrant out for your arrest or something like, because they're trying to search for information or whatever. This person that was, they just had a housing violation.
housing violation,
Oh
and they
my
treated you
God.
like you were a fucking pedophile or something. I mean, what the hell, or a murderer? That's insane. That is freaking insane. Oh my God.
Person didn't repair their screen over their pool
What
apparently
the fuck?
fast enough, and so they had housing violations, and that's what
That is
and then there was a
insane.
warrant because they didn't pay the
Didn't pay some
fines.
stupid fine for their homeowners association baloney.
Hmm.
Wow.
Totally, and they
That,
lived in a totally different part of the county
what the
than I
fuck?
did,
That
and
is un
yeah,
Okay.
so it's not a
and
case
if
where they
you
had a
were,
reason to say,
why would that person even need to be arrested? I mean, that's just
Yeah.
bonkers. Bonkers. Wow.
I'm gonna have
Jason,
to go, folks. So I put
unbelievable.
Yeah.
something in the chat and I put something on our normal way of
Facebook chat.
communication.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
okay,
So
Thanks,
check it
Jane.
thank
out.
you,
Okay. You're welcome.
anything that helps, I appreciate it.
Okay. It really, it's what my friend does, and it's really worked in her practice. So, okay. All right. All right. Love to all.
Love you guys. Have a
See you,
great
Jane.
week.
Have a good week.
You too.
Yeah, take care.
Yep.
I'll let you guys go. I appreciate you so much.
Love you so much,
We
Have a
Jason.
great day.
appreciate you.
Thanks for
Oh,
sharing that. That sucks.
thanks a
So
lot.
that's just
I don't know why I'm not getting out of here.
insane that happened to you. Insane.
Yeah, it is. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a good week.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, here, where's my end button? Oh, I should probably wrap this up.